Thank you, Chair. I'll talk on connectivity and the economic cooperation because energy part is mostly tackled. It's known fact that South Asia was once one of the most connected regions and is today one of the most fragmented region. From restriction on movement to high tariff wall, we have all SAFTA FTA has become is nowhere. Even the BBIN motor vehicles agreement is yet to be implemented. Multilateralism is not easy. ASEAN took decades to come up to the stage where it is today. Recent, often external factors influence it. TPP, TTIP, the two mega blocks proposed. The wind, they simply lost the wind thanks to Mr. Trump and Brexit. RCEP has hit a tariff roadblock. In the past, in the Cold War period, it was common. There were examples where economies often defied the natural advantages for the sake of some political thought. But the new economic order saw a change in this approach. Between 1990 and 2016, 93,000 Chinese companies invested in Taiwan. Over the last decade alone, Taiwanese companies invested $34 billion in China. And China contributes 30% of Taiwan's $380 billion, $18 billion export revenue. And this is notwithstanding the political animosity, known political animosity. The problem is that the same couldn't be implemented, or there are till very recently there was not much sign of it on this side of the world. Despite the long land border, there is and the India-Pakistan trade is barely $2 billion. It sways some $100 million on either side every year. You can see the lights of Karachi port standing on the Mundra port, but the ship, goods are transshipped through Colombo or Singapore. There is no coastal shipping agreement. What is bad for bilateral trade is good for others. At least, lot of steel mills in Pakistan or a good percentage of them use Indian gears. This goes to Dubai, and from Dubai it is going to Pakistan. Chemicals, MNCs are making supernormal profit by rerouting this through, they are taking product from India and rerouting through Dubai. Needless to say that mutual growth prospects are suffering. According to RBI, as in 2017, India's outward investment FDI stock was 155 billion. Not a fraction of it, not even a fraction of it is invested in the neighborhood. Recently, investments are flowing into Bangladesh, but the stock is, as in last year, the stock stood at $540 million only. Nepal may be getting some more recently. Pakistan's resistance to India-Afghanistan trade through its territories is an example why investments, it's just an example that why investments bypass, intra-SAARC investments are not happening. Indian answer, India is investing in Iran to bypass Pakistan. Intra-regional trade is in SAARC is only 2%. It's 2% of SAARC GDP, whereas 20% of ASEAN GDP, intra-regional trade. There is no investment flow from other SAARC countries to India either because of the because respective countries have serious restrictions on investment outgo. Some Bangladeshi, Nepalese companies, top companies like Pran and Mr. Binod Chaudhury's company have invested heavily in India, but through their foreign arms. This is about the legal part, but if you come to Calcutta, Delhi, I know in Calcutta and West Bengal, I know they even own, there are many factories that are owned by Bangladeshis and Nepalis. the entire money is coming through hundi. When you put restrictions on formal exchanges, informal trade goes. My personal inquiries, the personal inquiries that I made as a journalist, as in 2000 FY14, the informal trade with Nepal stood at $7 billion against a formal trade of $4 billion. As in 2010-11, ADB made an estimate that the informal trade with Bangladesh is same to formal trade. The irregular part of exchanges was clearly visible when last Pew Global came out with the estimate that India contributes 30% of Bangladesh's $13.5 billion remittance earning, as in 2016. Given that we have to, the challenge I believe is to formalize this this informal part, which will open up future potential. Clearly, informal trade, movement of capital, movement of human capital, all are very costly. It goes up only when you put such a serious restriction on formal exchanges. Then it gets its viability. As per UNESCAP, the trade potential in the region is $80 billion. As in 2015 or 16, it was standing at $28 billion. There are, one major issue is connectivity. I'm talking about, firstly, I'm talking about physical connectivity. It is a legacy issue. Say, for example, till the last decade, India didn't have good roads, good highways. Pakistan had. But then Pakistan neglected its railways. We had railways. Bangladesh had better roads than India till 1990s. Today, it lacks both railways and roads. So there is a connectivity gap. Then, for example, if we peek at, there is also a case of lack of harmonization. It's quite hilarious. A trade between Bangladesh and Nepal through India can actually be delayed by 3 days, because there are different holidays. There is another very interesting example is, say, for example, axle load of trucks. It is 8.2 in Bangladesh, 8.2 tons, whereas in India, Nepal and Bhutan, it's 10.2 tons. What does it mean? The biggest significance is you cannot pass a container seamlessly. So your trade is, and if you just check the photographs on Google, at any of the gate, Bangladesh, Nepal, you will see it's mostly, there is barely any container trade. That tells you a story that how costly the trade is. Since most of India's neighbors import from India, if the trade is, there is a trade balance is in India's favor. For large part, I did a personal study that it is approximately 1,500 kilometers the goods travel in India, and poor logistics cause serious cost spiraling to that. The good news is that there is some attention to these issues in recent years. So far as in terms of all the rail and road links to Nepal are under upgradation. Projects are underway, under construction. On the northeastern frontier, there is serious attention. I have just been back from Manipur, and things are moving. Of course, when I say things are moving, it is as per Indian standard. Because you cannot just compare with our bigger neighbor. The biggest change that has come is on Bangladesh front. The connection links Fulbari and Changrabanda. There are 2 gates of Bangladesh. They connect with Bhutanese gate and Nepalese gate of Panitanki Kakarbhita. This is some 30 kilometer and 80 kilometer distance. These are already upgraded. These are stretches of Asian highway and fully upgraded. If you pass today, the India-Bangladesh facilities on the India-Bangladesh border have been vastly improved, which means that the bigger, and most of us know about the projects that is undertaken in Bangladesh. So I am not going into that. I'm just giving a rough idea. We now have roughly 3 rail links. We are going to have 9. And all, I mean, one after another will come in next 2 to 3 years. There is a focused attention on container movement. There is a project coming up, a transshipment center is coming up at Ishardi in Bangladesh, which will enable the multimodal movement of containers. We already have coastal shipping in place. We are now extending the IWT. We have just extended the IWT, Inland Water Protocol, which will help movement of goods seamlessly. It's containers between Calcutta and Dhaka. So whatever I can foresee is a major change is coming on this front. And the energy part is already told. What is not told is that we are already sending oil to Bangladesh. It's in mutual advantage. We have refineries with excess capacity in the northeast, and Bangladesh has a serious problem in reaching petrol or fuel to the northern part of the country because there is no bridge. So it has already started, and a project to put a pipeline has been initiated. So I see more integration, economic integration on the Bangladesh front. The good news is, this is, as we all know, that bilateral is the cornerstone for multilateralism. We can see real life examples of this in Bangladesh, Bhutan, Nepal trade. A new terminal is coming up at Jogighopa in Assam that will ensure multimodal movement from Bhutan, India to Bangladesh. The Haldibari-Chilahati rail link is for Bhutan practically. Now the bigger issue is that from trade we have to move on to investment. To start with, this is normally the economy works that way. This investment is a vehicle of trade. Interestingly, the attention over last few years have triggered a growth in trade figures. I checked Indian figures. This is Commerce Ministry data. 23% rise in India's foreign trade with neighbors, including Myanmar. But Myanmar is stagnant trade, so is Pakistan. And you have to understand that Pakistan and Sri Lanka puts very high tariff walls. There is a 23% rise in India's trade with the neighbors, 30% rise in exports. And please remember that during the period, our total exports remained stagnant. So it benefits. In the latest study, A Glass Half Full of World Bank, they pointed out that non-tariff barriers, it is often perceived by neighbors that the whole trade is in India's favor. And India is putting non-tariff barriers, which are hurting them. But the recent World Bank report has actually busted that myth. They didn't find NTBs as a serious threat. What they find is lack of reforms and a lack of the conservatism, financial conservatism is actually hurting neighbors. I can give a very crucial example to this is if we check the production profile, item-wise production profile, item-wise export profile of our neighbors and India's. You will find in South Asia, we are competing with the same kind of product items. Take, for example, textiles. India, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka are competing in the same product category. Now, that is not the problem. If you compete in the same product category, if you are in the same product category, the issue is how you create the economic value chain, as I gave the China-Taiwan example. To make a solar panel, there are 7 stages. Right. Approximately 5 are made between China and Taiwan. So here comes the economic value chain. This is what we are missing over here. We all are fighting at with the customer and undercutting each other. And naturally, the smaller neighbors having lower capacity, they face most of the heat. There is barely any financial connectivity between India and its neighbors. This is a sad truth. The banking sector in Nepal and Bangladesh are crying for reforms. Nepal, if you take a study, if you study the debt equity ratio of companies in Nepal, you will see they are heavily loaded with equity, which is actually a wasteful expenditure. But in Bangladesh, there are some 30 plus banks, but excepting 5 or 7 PSU banks, no one goes for project financing, and project financing is basically it all ends up in bad loan. So which means there is no, how do you attract investment? Which means that the investor has to bring in his own money. He will not get the banking facility even. So these things has to change if we want to put, connectivity is no cure for all solution for economic growth. To improve from low equilibrium to high optimization, we have to tap the values, which is still missing. But there is little doubt that connectivity is throwing new opportunities. I'll end with a recent example. When the Inland Water Protocol was being extended last month, just after extending it, well, they were in queue for quite some time, I knew, a luxury cruise operator immediately placed a proposal to run services from Kolkata to Dhaka via Sundarbans. The tourists can get a leisurely view of Sundarbans. Please remember that Sundarbans mostly is on the Bangladesh side. And that part is more beautiful. And the hinterlands of Bangladesh, it will be a 15-day travel. These are for foreign tourists mostly. I know their customer profile. What it means, it is very interesting. First, West Bengal, which gets very low share of foreign tourists, will get more foreign tourists. Second, Bangladesh is nowhere in the tourist map of the world. It will get foreign tourists. There is another part of it. Till date, not many people do recognize this, but Forbes written about it. Our outbound foreign tourist from Indian foreign tourist is approximately 5.4 million, and that is increasing by 25% a year. And they are categorized as one of the top spenders in the world. You look at our neighbors, no one is jumping really for them. So connectivity is opening options, and the recent, all of you must be knowing that the world's largest visa operation is nowadays run by India in Bangladesh, 10,000 visas a day. It triggered a very interesting move. Bangladesh now gets roughly 1 to 1.3 lakh visitors from India. And I see, some small scale operators started moving. People are trying to take advantage of it, but Bangladesh has to build those resources. Thank you very much.